The rescue team found her alone, barefoot, and trembling beneath the shattered remains of a downed satellite array. Her skin dusted in ash, her eyes reflecting stars she didn't recognize. She had no ID, no data tag, no memories, not even a name. Just one thing, over and over, in a voice hoarse and broken, she whispered a string of coordinates, each digit perfectly clear, as if etched into her bones. No one knew what they pointed to until an ancient warship, long thought lost to myth, pinged to life from deep beneath a forgotten moon. But the ship was sealed, and the only one who could open it was her. Now Command wants to know who she really is, because those coordinates don't just mark a battlefield. They mark a mass grave, and she may be the last survivor, or the first sign it's all starting again. She didn't know where she was, didn't even know what species she belonged to, but her feet were burned raw from walking. Her eyes kept scanning the horizon like a hunted animal, and her mouth, dry, trembling, kept whispering numbers over and over again in a language she shouldn't have known. Human recon patrols had found her half buried in the charred soil of Sigma 4, a moon abandoned after the war. She wore no clothing beyond a torn cloak wrapped awkwardly around her shoulders, but beneath the ashen grime was skin that shimmered like stone turned flesh. When they brought her back to the outpost, she didn't speak a word, only stared at the lights, flinched at voices, and then, shakily, began writing in the dust. Numbers. Coordinates. Always the same. When asked her name, she touched her throat, then shook her head. The medic said she had no implants, no neural tags, no vocal damage, only trauma. Deep, genetic-level trauma. She was not a prisoner. She was not chipped. She should not exist. But every night she would sit bolt upright in bed, eyes wide, whispering through clenched teeth that same untraceable code, until one night she added a word to the string. There. The officers cross-referenced the coordinates with Deep Space Archives, and the blood drained from their faces. That place wasn't on any civilian charts. It was a battlefield blacklisted even from war records. It had been deemed a phantom site, its survivors listed as Kia, its history purged. And now this girl, this voiceless, unnamed wanderer, kept drawing it into every surface she touched, from fogged glass to her own skin. The mission was authorized in silence, off the books. A single human vessel, the Draven, approached the coordinates with the girl aboard. She had asked for nothing, no food, no clothes, no name, just to be brought there. She stood at the viewing window in her new-issued uniform, baggy too large, her frame still weak. But when the stars shifted and the ship dropped from FTL, her body straightened for the first time. Her breath caught. She gripped the glass like it was trying to pull her in. The crew saw nothing outside, just debris, dead stars, floating shards of twisted metal. But she whispered, almost reverently, "They're still there." And then she collapsed. When she awoke, she remembered nothing again, not the ship, not the crew, but she walked directly to the armory and pointed at the old pilot suits, selecting one from a row no one had used in years. The crew hesitated, but something in her eyes, calm, strange, commanding, made the captain nod. They fitted her for atmospheric descent. She insisted on going alone. They watched from orbit as her drop pod streaked toward the battlefield, silent, half buried in space dust, and vanished into the clouds. The crew waited for hours. Then the signal returned, her voice crackling over a long-dead frequency. I remember. They didn't believe it was her at first. But then she began naming names, soldiers, ships, battle cries, the dead. She described the final moments of the Battle of Viril, 6 in perfect detail, despite the records claiming she'd never been born. She told them she had stood among the last of the Whisper Corps, an experimental joint species telepathic strike unit, until something had wiped them out. But she hadn't died. She had been overwritten. She said her memories weren't just hers. They were layered, like songs sung over each other. Pain. Orders. Executions. She found the remains of her old unit beneath the ruins, still preserved in stasis pods, forgotten, lost, sealed off from time by the last pulse of a broken AI. When she touched one of the pods, her body convulsed, and she screamed as though a second soul had entered her lungs. The data feeds showed her vitals spiking, then stabilizing. When she spoke again, her voice was clearer, stronger, human. She asked for her file to be opened. It read name, Talia Vex. Rank, Lieutenant, Whisper Corps. Status, terminated. The captain stared at the report, then at her on the screen, kneeling in dust, hands pressed to the pod's cold surface. She didn't cry. She just whispered, they didn't die. They were buried alive. One by one, they pulled the pods from the wreckage. Each one still held life, barely. She helped revive them, one touch at a time, and with each touch, more of her memories returned. She wept when she found her commander. She held the hand of a dying tech officer who blinked once, smiled, and whispered, "You found us." Word spread fast. The lost battlefield, the buried soldiers, the girl with no name who found her way back home through the black. She didn't just recover her identity, she brought back the ones history had erased. The girl who once couldn't speak now stood at the memorial stone with her unit beside her, alive. Scarred. Whole. She wore her old insignia now, stitched fresh into a new uniform, and as the flag was raised behind her, she turned to the human captain and whispered, "Thank you for listening to me when I was just a voice with no name." He shook his head and said, "You were more than a voice. You were our map back to what mattered." And when they left the battlefield, finally silent, finally still, the stars felt just a little warmer.